I mean, I can ask him in chat. Either way, he's streaming, so right now, I suppose we can see his hand, and we will discuss it as such. He's responding. Yeah, he's on a 5-minute delay. So he is also playing Ruby Sapphire and playing into a Blood Diamond opponent here. A little bit interesting. Haven't seen Blood Diamond in the meta as a very strong contender for a while, but it does have a lot of explosive force. Angels are scary. There's a lot of good stuff there. So I happen to, at the very least, be a little bit aware that Coach's list of Ruby Sapphire is fundamentally different than the one we just saw. And we'll see if that matters one way or the other. But he's been playing a lot with this list. And there's a good example of one reason that it is actually a little bit different. He's got that Cerulean Mentalist there, and he puts that onto the board. That will inspire any 3 and higher cost troops with the ability to draw a card just by dealing damage to the opponent.
I may have missed this Penta, but with Coach's face there, what is the champion that he actually has?
He's definitely playing Tetsuit. You can see Tetsut's like a little underground there. Like you can see the bottom. Yeah, no, you can definitely tell for sure. There's enough on display there that you know that's Tetsut. So we see the Meek to destroy Cerulean Mentalist. Meek getting a little bit of work done there, and the Vampire King hitting the board. 3/4 with for 4 double blood threshold. A fantastic blood troop that's capable of, when it deals damage, not only does it's basically siphon health out with that life drain, but it will reveal a card from the opponent's hand, and if it's a troop, it'll turn that card into a vampire and then put it into play on the Vampire King player's side of the board, which is very, very scary. One of the armies of myth cards that I'm most excited about, the Vampire Princess, of course, is going to do the same thing almost, but with actions, just slowly eating away at your opponent's hand.
Yeah, I have to say, I haven't seen much of this particular match yet, but generally speaking, the blood control matchups are some of the harder ones for most of the Tetsut decks. But maybe with Coach has going on here, it might be a little different story.
So we see a Solitary Exile coming down to deal with a Buccaneer. Either an abundance of control handled in Mip's hand here, or just trying to mitigate as much early damage as possible, because like we've seen, the Azurfate deck is perfectly capable of exploding damage through. Coach pulls a Mentalist out here from the top of his deck. Might just say pass go here. Doesn't have another card to put onto the board, but we'll see.
Yeah, and it was just the Vampire's only been bounced once, I think. So if that's true, then this might indicate another Meek that's in hand, possibly. But it doesn't appear so.
No. Interesting, though, because Coach could have waited until he had a shard to hold up that counter and play the Mentalist. Chooses to just let this go as is.
Yep, we see Coach pointing out the number of charges as well as the number of certain card in hand there.
Yep.
Let's see the Vampire King replayed again.
Returns to the board. Semi interestingly here. Time Ripple can be used on the Solitary Exile at some point to... Okay, it looks like Coach is actually going to do this at end of turn. I'm not sure I 100% agree with this, but it's an interesting play, so I think he'd like this. So that Solitary Exile goes back to Mitthraw's hand, where he'll be able to use it, but that returns the Buccaneer to the board, and the Buccaneer enters play and bounces the Vampire King again, and gets inspired by the Mentalist here, so it will draw a card if it deals damage, which it's almost guaranteed to do here with 0 resources open on mid side of the board. And when I say almost guaranteed, I mean 100%. I can't think of something that would stop it.
Yeah, seems likely Coach went for it just because he wants to draw that extra card there.
Yeah, I mean, he gets a bit of damage through here. He draws the extra card, And now he can and will play the Rock Elemental, which looks like it might. Yeah, it's a 2/2 Fizzle, a little bit less exciting than the ones we've seen in the last couple of matches. But that still gets inspired by the Cerulean Mentalist because the Rock Elemental comes into play with a base cost of 6. Now, even though we know Mithra has a Solitary Exile and a Vampire King in hand, yeah, he's going to try to replay the Vampire King. Coach, considering what to do, he has a couple of options, and he's going to let the Vampire King resolve and hit the board. So now what Mithra's hoping to do is block any number of these troops that are going to be swinging in, deny a card draw, and gain some health back. But we'll see if Coach deals with it before he swings or not. Guys, just as a heads up, if you can't report your matches on Battlefy yet, please hard refresh the page. It does work now. Thank you. Thank you for your patience. King Cobra saying that's not working. I'm not sure what to tell you, King Cobra, because I know plenty of people it is working for. Like, you have to hard refresh the page. Like, maybe close the whole thing and come back in.
So we do see the double bolt here on the Vampire King to clear the way after playing a shard.
Yeah. An interesting decision there to use 2 cards to deal with that Vampire King as opposed to using just the counter magic that's sitting in his hand. Coach does redraw 2 cards for that, and he gets exactly what he was looking for, a Ruby and a Sapphire Shard. That will mean absolutely nothing to him in the long run. That's not entirely true. Those will start getting him charges. There's nothing in his there's nothing in his deck that will really need that at this point. But he's in a pretty commanding position. If his opponent played that Vampire King last turn instead of using Extinction or something, you have to wonder if Extinction's even in hand.
Yeah, I think I like the way that Coach has navigated this game here. And yeah, even though he used the 2 cards there for the Vampire King, he redrew some more extra cards as well from the crackback. So being able to keep attacking and holding back that counter magic seems like the way to go.
So we see a murder on the Buccaneer. Coach is going to let that hit. So there's the murder. We still know of a Solitary Exile in Mithra's hand, but he can't replay that here. We've got Time Rippled, so it does cost 4. So it looks like Coach will get another turn of swinging. Although, because of the low attack and defense that the Rock Elemental was created with, it is vulnerable to low-cost removal like Meek.
Yeah, but if you're in Coach's spot, you got to feel pretty good. You've got board position. You're drawing more cards than your opponent every turn. Yeah.
Currently, I believe Coach is up one game in this match. Just as a heads up, I think he said that in a chat that I was reading. Now, he's going to choose to swing here, see what happens, get that 4 damage in. And we see that in his hand he has pulled out the Eldritch Dreamer, which does have that Prime Sapphire of Mind, which will, if he plays that with the Mentalist on board, he will get to... Oh! Yeah, this is interesting. Repel being used on the Mentalist. The Eldritch Dreamer, if it's inspired by the Mentalist, will draw 2 cards when it deals damage. I think Coach is going to let this one go through. He's just going to let the Mentalist be destroyed by the Repel, and he does. This means the Rock Elemental will get through. Still draw 1 extra card, so that Repel didn't really have a good target. Either you leave an Inspire troop on the board, or you leave a troop that has been inspired to draw cards.
Yeah, the only thing maybe Coach could have considered playing the Dreamer first, but I'm not sure what his list is. Maybe he's got some other big cards that he'd rather play.
Oh, he redraws a Mentalist here. In this situation, with the counter magic still in hand, I think almost every player would just hold on to it and pass the turn. So Eldritch Dreamer hits the board. We'll see if Mithra manages to find some removal in addition to that Solitary Exile. Again, with the threat of the Vampire King out of the way, this is a little bit interesting. This is the 3-cost Solitary Exile. This is not the 4-cost one that we saw earlier. And it looks like Coach is happy to just let this hit the board. This will probably put the Eldritch Dreamer in the box, and it does. It gets kind of just absorbed in there. Can't play another Solitary Exile this turn. Well, he can. But, oh, and he lays out the shard after playing the Solitary Exile. A little bit, I don't know if this tricksy or not, but still not playing the other Solitary Exile.
Yeah, that is a little surprising to me. And I don't know. I think I might have actually pulled the trigger there and protected the Dreamer. Especially knowing that there was a second.
Might have. It must be like another repel or something. We'll see. Potentially revealing all of his cards here. No, doesn't. Gonna take another. Oh, well, yeah, 2 damage and draws a card here. Mentalist will hit the board, and now Coach is in a pretty commanding position with that hand. It is really hard to stare down an opponent when they have just multiple ways to shut you down.
Coach pointing out that he is on 5 charges now.
Yeah, so another Rock Elemental potentially on the way. Although he does have to be a little bit careful about... Oh, Cerebral Domination here. If that hits the board, Coach will not be able to play cards or activate cost-based abilities on his opponent's turn, and he chooses to counter that. He wants to be able to use his actions. So Mitthraw draws out the first counter magic and then lays out the extinction to try to clear the board. And I guess Coach deciding that this might be worth it.
How lucky do you feel
Yeah,
that you're going to be on that headset?
That's interesting there. He lets that extinction hit him, loses his troops, loses his board state, knowing that the last card in his hand is
the Solitary.
Is a Solitary Exile. A 4-cost Solitary Exile.
Mm-hmm.
So here comes that other Tetsit charge bar that becomes a 4/4, which is almost enough on its own. Now, I wonder if Coach is going to time ripple his Rock Elemental in response to a Solitary Exile play here, because that would make my day. Because, fun fact, Solitary Exile has to target something when it comes into play. Yeah, so if he time ripples his Rock Elemental right now, when Solitary Exile enters the board, the only target for the Solitary Exile will be the other Solitary Exile.
Yep.
Oh, no, he chooses not to do it. CoachFliperon on stream here, proving that he is, in fact, the worst player in the world.
That's a little bit harsh.
He's on my team, I can say that. So he lets his Rock Elemental go into the box. Scott, he can just time ripple at the end of turn to get that out. It looks like he's going to do that. I believe there's an Eldritch Dreamer in the other box.
Yep.
Now, naturally, he could have just done this. And you know, then he would have had the counter magic open and whatnot. Whether or not he saw it or had reasons to do it, I'm sure there's actually probably a reason to have done it the way he has. So I'm just giving him a little bit of salt. Yeah, see? And here comes the murder. So the counter magic on this will leave both players with no cards in hand, but Coach will be drawing a card for the beginning of his turn, as well as drawing a card off of the Eldritch Dreamer swing, which is pretty much confirmed here. Now, the scariest thing that could happen for Coach at this point would be if there was a way for Mitt to deal with the Eldritch Dreamer and to put a troop onto the board, because Dimit is still capable of regaining that health and putting Mitt back into a commanding position.
So just going back to the last turn for 1 second, I think it's fair to point out that knowing now that Mitthra actually had the murder, it really didn't end up mattering, because he could have just gone for the murder into response, and then he just ends up being in the same position there. It ends up being Elemental instead of Dreamer.
And look, because the counter magic was still in hand. The other Solitary Exile
here.
Well, it's not even another Solitary. It's the time rippled Solitary, which wouldn't exist if it was in a box. So the lack of time ripple there actually punishing... I think he did get punished for it. not to rag on him too much, but I think the correct play was in fact the other thing. But it doesn't matter when you just top deck Dreamers all day.
All the dreamers living the dream. Can we get the Hacky Dream emote here in chat, guys? Does look like Coach is still ahead here. Mithra's got to have an answer here.
Pact of Pain will give him one other card draw. Repel would be the answer that he's looking for here. The only, well, yeah, I think it's the only 2-cost thing that would actually save him here within Blood Diamond. We see a little bit of deliberation. Like I said, Coach is up 1 game in this match, so if he takes this down, this will be a 2-0 victory. And it looks like that is the case, so we will drop that stream down and head back on over. There is still about 20 minutes left in the round.